Hello, everyone. It's Wednesday. That means we talk about Book of Boba Fett spoilers. Do we got some spoilers for you on this episode?
Just a few.
Just a few. I'm Eric. This is Kim. So yeah, if you haven't seen Chapter 6 this week, I think I can actually say the title at least before the full spoiler warning. From the Desert Comes a Stranger. But if you haven't seen Chapter 6 From the Desert Comes a Stranger, you're about to hear a lot of things. So here's your final warning. 3, 2, 1. We are in full spoiler zone for this very eventful episode of the Book of Boba Fett. His name's in the title.
He was in this episode.
He nodded. He appeared on screen and he gave a nod to the Mandalorian, which is more than last week. But damn, if you want some Star Wars, this was the episode Dave Filoni directed this season. He also co-wrote it, very notably, because Favreau's written every other episode by himself. And man, Filoni knows his Star Wars, loves his Star Wars, built a lot of Star Wars himself over the past decade plus. And man, did that come to fruition here. Kim, what did you think of this episode? It had it all. What'd you think?
I mean, I will start by saying that this episode filled me with joy.
Mhm.
And if ever I, lapse, it was definitely a reminder of how much I love Star Wars. You might call it overstuffed, but not me. It gave me all the tingles. Anyway, this episode took another surprising turn. I think this series has been full of surprising turns, or several turns here. And not only because it didn't really feel like a penultimate episode in the series that should be building towards this epic conclusion, but also because it devoted this huge amount of time to a de-aged Luke Skywalker that I don't think any of us predicted. But what a treat. I couldn't believe what I was watching.
Crazy, right? I mean, look, I will own up to the fact that last week I said, I don't think we'll see Grogu. I think that'll happen off screen because they'll save him for Mandalorian season 3. And one of the reasons I thought they'd wait on Grogu is because then you'd have to deal with the Luke Skywalker of it all. And I didn't think they'd deal with that on the Book of Boba Fett. But no, they dove all the way in. It's like, look, if I take a step back, I still can say, critically speaking, structurally, this show is bizarre. Structurally.
Agreed. I admire that, though.
How they've approached this episode to episode, what's happening, why is it called the Book of Boba Fett is a big question I think the last 2 weeks might have raised. So that is my critical eye. And next week when we talk about the finale, I think we'll dive even more into the show as a whole. That aside, as another episode of Star Wars, this was incredible because so much, like there were multiple moments that I just was like, I can't believe this. I'll say, I said out loud, I was watching this at midnight, because I had a feeling it was a big episode. I did stay up to watch it, and there is a moment when Luke Skywalker and Ahsoka Tano, because she's in this episode too, are standing next to each other, and I said out loud to no one because my wife was sleeping, that's crazy. Like that I was looking at like a young Luke Skywalker and a live action Ahsoka Tano standing next to each other, sharing space in a Star Wars story. Crazy. I don't even know how to approach this episode. There's just so much to talk about.
I mean, it's been a really rich series in a lot of ways. This episode, as we've already said, gave us so much, but it's been juxtaposed with this slow pace that we've talked about, but that has kind of allowed us to savor a lot of these moments. In this episode, we got a really long extended training sequence between Luke and Grogu that, of course, called back to Yoda training Luke, and the roles are switched here.
Yeah, that's the thing about this episode is, once again, so Boba Fett was in one scene versus last week when he was in 0 scenes, still didn't speak for the title character, extremely strange. And so, but you wouldn't even say necessarily, well, this episode stars the Mandalorian. Some scenes star him. He's obviously in it more than Boba Fett is, but then he leaves and we just stay with Luke and Grogu. And then it becomes a bunch of the episode about life on this planet where he's building the Jedi Temple that we know is destined to be burned down eventually when things go bad with Ben Solo. But yeah, I guess, by the way, I'm mentioning Ben Solo. I mean, that's the thing about this episode that was so cool as just like a Star Wars fan is, and this is why Filoni probably he had to do it, not just because we're dealing with characters he created, and we'll get to the other one in a bit, but also because this episode directly ties to The Mandalorian, of course, directly ties to Boba Fett, the series in some respects with some of the Cobb Vanth stuff, but also it connects directly to the original trilogy, to the prequels. We get a flashback to Order 66 and to the sequels, because we are seeing the Jedi Academy being built that is destined for failure, but we are directly leading into Luke's path into like the Last Jedi. Ooh, the Last Jedi. Never a controversial film. So yeah, it just, this was like integrating, and the Clone Wars came huge into this episode, of course. So yeah, it was crazy. Let's I guess we have to talk more about Luke. It's just because it was, what do you think? You know, it's like, first of all, I will say personally, the effect was better. They hired, they got some press last year. They hired a guy who done a really great deep fake after the episode aired that some said was better than the episode, and they hired him at ILM. I'm guessing they said, here's an NDA that you cannot break or we'll kill you. Guess what? You're working on Luke again. That's my guess. We don't know the making of this episode. What do you think of Luke as a character and an effect in this episode?
I mean, as an effect, much better. Yes, I pretty much kind of bought into this idea that he was there, whereas often I don't, with the Carrie Fisher of it all. And I did not like Tarkin. I like Tarkin. I mean, the effects of
right, but it didn't look great.
But yeah, and I mean, I suppose in a way, this is the small screen, so any kind of jankiness is not as easy to spot as when you're watching it on the big screen. So so bold, brave of them to dedicate so much screen time to this, to Luke and the VFX here, and it mostly works, I think.
I think so too. There's still that little bit of weirdness, mostly when he's speaking. I think Mark Hamill is credited. I only can guess. Again, we'll see if we get another Disney Gallery about this, but I'm guessing Hamill is recording lines, and then they're trying to de-age his voice, and it sounds a little weird. It sounds like a dubbed movie at points, like this sort of weird little disembodied feeling, which is why I think they try to not have him speaking on screen a lot. Like they'll stay on Grogu. But it's a lot better than that Mandalorian finale, which again I loved, but you still had to kind of buy into an effect that wasn't 100% there. It looked a lot better, and I guess like you said, it's like he's on screen for so much, it really kind of keeps opening the possibility of
we've lost Eric. But yes, Luke, I'll fill in while we wait for Eric to return. But
I'll get some fan questions as well that we can bounce off
cool.
of. Chat, if you got some questions, send them now, please.
I'm back.
Here he is.
I'm going to fess up to what just happened.
I was just about to talk about frogs.
No, we can have frogs. I just need to tell you what happened. I'm holding a Shore Trooper action figure in my hand because, I like to hold the Star Wars figure while I'm talking about Star Wars. And I hit it on my keyboard in such a way that it knocked me off for a second.
Cad Bane's fault, I think.
I was too excited.
That's so funny.
Glad I was able to resolve that quickly.
Anyway, just wanted to say, because I mentioned frogs, we finally discovered the cause of the phenomenon of raining frogs.
We did. It's a whole Magnolia tie-in. I love Paul Thomas Anderson, so I accept that.
Exactly.
Luke, it was cool. It's just when Ahsoka says to him, when he says, well, I see you again, I can't remember what did she say, probably or maybe, but I'm like, well, now I think they will see each other again, because we have now established that they can do this again. It's not 100%, but it keeps getting better. And you kind of feel like right now there is a whole division at ILM, including that dude they hired last year off the internet. They're just like,
and that's okay. I'm cool with that. There's more story. Clearly, there's more story to tell about Luke in those intervening years. This being one of them. So I'm happy to if they can do it well enough. to see that more?
I think because this episode had so many things, let's sort of stick with the Luke of it all, and then we'll go to other things instead of sort of jumping around in order. This episode, because look, we found out again something I didn't even know if we'd see on this episode last week. We saw a gift for Grogu. What it was, a little chainmail shirt to protect his.
Cute.
It's so cute. But then Luke, gives Grogu a pretty big choice here at the end, which, frankly speaking, is kind of a dick move from Luke. And at first I didn't like it at all. At first it was kind of bothering me, like story-wise. And then I took a step back and I kind of saw why they were probably doing it. What did you think here of his choice saying, take the shirt from your surrogate daddy and you can be reunited with him, or take the lightsaber and never see him again and become a Jedi? What'd you think of it?
I mean, like you, I thought that is a dick move, but okay, this is the Jedi way. But we know kind of what happens with Luke and his life and the choices that he made, and he did not lead a happy existence. So, it's almost as if we're being asked, or Grogu's being asked to choose between that kind of miserable life or love and happiness. And I really think that he can only choose one way, and it's gonna be the armor and the Mandalorian. This series has all been about found family and choosing the people to be with that means something to you, and that's the choice it's gonna make. And it's this episode spent time showing us how much Grogu already knows of the Force, and how much he's learned already under Luke's tutelage. So I think he can step away from that and quite happily and go along on his own path.
Yeah, they established that he kind of already had learned a lot, probably when he was at the original Jedi Academy on Coruscant. And, Luke says, I'm just sort of reteaching him stuff he already knows.
Yes.
And
it's
also
like he's remembering, he says.
Right, he's remembering it. Yeah. Also, like, there is the canon issue. It's up to with the canon that, as far as we know, Ben Solo is the first student at the new academy. So it kind of feels like Grogu has to not be there for Ben to show up. I will say, and we'll get to the Luke of it all again in a second. The one thing that kind of bugs me about this is it just feels like it kind of too quickly undercuts the big sad finale of Mandalorian season 2. If Grogu is going to return to him next week, that not even on the show The Mandalorian, because obviously they were going to be reunited at some point, like that was inevitable. But I do feel like this feels like they're kind of undercutting themselves quicker than I maybe is ideal, because it was such an emotional moment. He takes his helmet off and he has this poignant moment. It bugs me a little, even though, I agree with you that he has to make that choice, right?
Yeah, I think so. And I, in a way, I feel like it gets this moment out of the way for the next season of The Mandalorian. So instead of it being a focus or something that's all on our minds going into that season can now concentrate on something else, something that we're not, constantly already talking about.
Yeah, I think we've talked about this a little bit, and I see a lot of people speculating. It's like, it seems like what we're getting here with Mando is more of a, like, what will his next step be? Will he just go back to bounty hunting, or will it be something else? Will it be about saving Mandalore, which came up last week? I think that's all going to be mixed into it there. With Luke, it's interesting because you have to aim towards the Luke he is in the sequel trilogy, who feels like, he failed and that the Jedi were a mistake, which he changes his mind about by the end of The Last Jedi, despite what some people seem to think online. But it's interesting, the whole, like, no attachments thing for the Jedi, because it's not said out loud, but it's very implicitly in the prequel, like, you're being told this led to their ruin. Like, they were rigid to a fault, and them and Anakin, who was volatile and had issues, this set him off by being told, oh no, you can't just love this woman and have a relationship with her. And that was a bad way to go. And you always wondered, like, wouldn't Luke as a Jedi do something different? I still hope we fill in those gaps, because I still want to know, because Luke clearly cares deeply for his friends and has attachments.
Yes.
But we also have to go with the idea that maybe he did try to be old school in his teachings, There's some missing pieces there. again, this is not Luke Skywalker's story on this show, even though the show's already flipping around a lot. So I hope we fill in those gaps, but I can still buy into it. Like I said, at first I was like, what are you doing, Luke? And I still say that he's making a mistake. Like he shouldn't make Grogu make that choice, but I kind of get why in the big picture they feel like this is what Luke's trying. He's trying to follow the old rules. But we can yell at him from the off screen. You shouldn't do that, man.
The right choice is clearly Mando anyway.
Yes. His buddy got a little chainmail. I did love lots of cute Grogu here, kicking the training thing, and just him doing his little training montage when he's doing.
Yeah. Also, his cuteness is lost on Luke. I'm like, how are you not just falling over yourselves with just these cooing noises?
It would be funny if he was like, Luke's like, Ahsoka, you got to get over here. He's being so cute again. Ahsoka was cool to see, but a little. I mean, she served the purpose of, Mandalorian interacting with her, and not because he he's staying away from Grogu. She's a little cagey when he says like, "What are you doing here?" And she's like, "I want to ask you the same thing." So we see her leave, but we don't kind of know what brought her there in the first place. Was it just sensing Grogu and Luke? And she and Luke have clearly already had, again, conversations about Anakin, which is a whole thing I think we'd like to see more of, at some point.
I thought it was very interesting to see their relationship here, because Luke is, asking her advice a lot, and he is kind of in deference to her, which was cool to see.
Right.
And yeah, in the live action Star Wars, it's not something we've seen of Luke before.
No, and you have to think, and again, this is why I hope we get sort of something set with Luke and before this, whether it's the Ahsoka show or somewhere else. Like, he would have so many questions for Ahsoka, because she knows his dad. Like, he didn't get to spend much time with Obi-Wan, but she could tell him a million stories about Anakin. So, but you kind of feel they already had those conversations, because she's like, "Oh, you're like your father." And so clearly he understands the relationship the two of them had. But yeah, hopefully we get more of that at some point. So let's go back to Tatooine, where the rest of this episode was, when we weren't being like our jaw dropped from the Jedi of it all. Let's save Cobb Vanth for the last, actually, and the introduction we got. We only got one scene with Boba Fett, as we laughed about. He does a classic Boba nod to Mando.
Classic.
We were joking. I saw Dan Murrell joke about this, and other people joke about this on Twitter. Like, classic Boba Fett, barely, not speaking and standing in the corner, and I was like, and nodding.
It's what we wanted.
Right.
What we wanted. This is the Boba Fett we wanted to see in this series.
Poor Boba. I love his flashback stuff, but we'll see. And then the other thing we should talk about is R.I.P. Garsa Flip, Jennifer Beals' character, it seems, because we get the Pike Syndicate escalating matters, and they go into there and they leave that bomb. And I was a little sad to see her go. I just liked her presence, and I thought, like, well, that's a cool character, like the bar owner who knows everything. Like, it felt like you could do more with her there. But I also understand why they kind of want to, at this point, even though it feels like the Pike Syndicate has been not given the importance they should heading into the finale. This is like raising the stakes, along with what happens to Cobb Vanth, which again we'll talk about next.
This was quite a cool moment. I liked seeing this, kind of terror moment. I don't know whether she might not be dead. We didn't see her body,
right?
But I don't see why they would keep her alive, really. I think, for me, this sequence was meant to mobilize the people of the town to rise up and join Boba Fett and fight against the Pikes ultimately.
I think so too. And the other reason I think she's dead is, even though I joked about this on Twitter, is I said, thank the maker, Max Rebo had the night off, because they show the band and no Max. It's a droid drummer and that Biff. And I felt like, oh, they didn't want us to be like, oh no, Max Rebo is dead. So.
I mean, maybe he phoned in sick with COVID.
Right, maybe COVID. Or some people have said maybe Max was in on it. Maybe Max is, there's that drummer. I did like that droid drummer.
Yes,
I forgot to mention the droid ants, by the way, that were building the Jedi Temple. So lots of fun droids here.
Are we going to find out how Luke got those over to the island?
Yeah, I don't think so. It was just they gave him a ship. You know, he is such a war hero. He could be like, hey, Leia, can I have a bunch of those droids to help me build some stuff? And they'll give it to him. So let's talk about like the Cobb Vanth, who was, look, the episode opened with him, and that was a really cool way to open. Like Timothy Oliphant's back as Cobb Vanth. Love him. Of course, he was going to be overshadowed by like huge, crazy legacy characters coming back after that. But great to check in on him. But of course, the big thing is later on when Mandalorian comes to. Oh, and we got to see again like the Pike Syndicate. He stops this spice sale from happening here. It is very confusing that Lucas took the name Spice. Now that Dune is sort of very much in the pop culture consciousness here, because like it looks like Spice from Dune. They give a little sparkle to it.
Look at that. Yeah, the sparkle. Yeah.
Because at first I'm like, wait, is that sand? And like, oh no, it's Spice.
No, I know what that is. That is spice. How do they consume spice? Smoke it? Is all the usual ways? Inject it? I don't know.
We don't know, right? Yeah, we haven't gone. We have to meet some spice heads and find out what's happening here. But then the end, later on in the episode, not the very end, because a couple big things happen after. But when Mando shows up, tries to recruit him, they have a fun scene together. What does he say? He has a line about that's why I like you. You're the smile on your face or something.
Yes.
That Cobb says to the helmeted face of the Mandalorian.
Classic Cobb Vanth.
Yes, yeah. Oliphant's so great. We joked about this with Mandalorian, but the dude was just born to play a cowboy, right?
He was, yes. And what I liked about his introduction here was that it reestablished that he's pretty handy, really, and that's what ultimately Mando wants him for, is to join the gang, because he doesn't hesitate. He's handy with his guns, and it reestablishes his morals as well. So
I think so too. They actually did a very good job, I thought, like, because the opening, we see him confront these Pike guys that are bringing drugs into his town. Basically, he's a quick draw. He takes out all of them, but the one he leaves alive, to say stay away. And then we'll get to the stranger, the title character of this episode, who turns out is from the desert, becomes a stranger. But I loved, he's very quick to notice someone dangerous is coming. Everyone get inside, and just sort of establish his that he's smart and he's moral. And then what a great entrance! A hat on a hat on a hat on a hat of cool Star Wars stuff of the live action debut, very long awaited for some fans, of Cad Bane, walks into town here in a great shot where, if you know who the character is, if you're like me, it's 12:40 in the morning and you go, ah! You see that silhouette of the coat and the hat.
I wrote down what I wrote. Just wrote down what an entrance.
Right.
The tinkling wind chimes. And everything going quiet, and Cobb Vanth sending everyone inside and just sensing that something bad was about to go down, and then you see him in the distance.
The Mandalorian episode that introduced Cobb Vanth, of course, leaned very heavily into the Western part of Star Wars that's always there, with the small town and with the cowboys teaming up with the Indians, to use the old school term for with them teaming up with the Tusken Raiders. But this, of course, the showdown, and Cad Bane always been dressed like a cowboy anyway. So what a cool moment. And again, the fact that Filoni, this was his episode, these are his babies. Ahsoka is his baby that he developed on the Clone Wars. Cad Bane is his baby, who's never been seen in live action until now. Long awaited. Where the hell was he? I thought this was just a very cool way. And if you don't know the character, I think does its job of like being like, this is a guy not to mess with, right?
Yeah, and I thought it was interesting. When he's trying to negotiate with Cobb Vanth, he says about Boba Fett that he's a cold-blooded killer who worked for the Empire, which is, what every one of us who's been watching this series has been saying, and some people some people saying, how could he become this character that the series is portraying him as? Well, you know, here's a guy who thinks of him the way we all did, perhaps going into the series.
I'm glad you brought up that line too, because that I noted that one as well, because it's like, again, I have some issues with the structure of this show and the strangeness of the Boba Fett present day stuff. But yeah, Cad Bane coming in there, he does a couple of big things that I wish they'd maybe paced out better. But going into the finale, which is he brings that up. He brings up like Boba Fett's history, which this show again didn't go into that much. It was like Boba being saved by the Tuskens and what happened to him, but we didn't get into like before that, as we keep joking about the guy who's has to be told no disintegrations. Mm-hmm. So Cad Bane brings that up. And also, you know, a big issue I've had, and I know you talked about too, as far as like, we're heading into the finale and the Pike Syndicate just on their own are a little ethereal. Yes, they blew up the bar, but it's still not like, we don't care about them as like villains. Mm. So Cad Bane is here to kind of give the heavy lifting to the Pike Syndicate, a tangible threat. If you know the Clone Wars, he's a character you're already invested in. But clearly in that scene, you know, he takes out the deputy. He shoots, you know, 2 guys at once. He doesn't kill Cobb Vanth. He shoots him in the shoulder. So more Oliphant, yay. But shows he is not to be trifled with very quickly. So it's almost, again, maybe they should have done this a little bit better throughout the season. But in one scene, I think they're trying to kind of do a lot here with Cad Bane that mostly works. Mostly, no.
I forgive it because he just is so cool.
He is so cool. I'll repeat the joke I made right before we started recording this, which is just that this episode felt like they had a giant box of Star Wars figures and we're like, this one and this one and this one. And it was awesome on that. Again, maybe this show shouldn't have been called the Book of Boba Fett. But yeah, hard to be like, oh, I didn't care about any of that.
No, yeah, I did read some. I'm sure there are plenty of people that felt that way, Eric, to be honest, but not me. I loved it.
Let's see. From the chat here, first of all, just thank you, Ryan, for putting a few of just the high praise. I did like seeing Scotty D. Really love this episode. Nick Nullife, episode was fantastic. Don't care what it's called. While Little Buddha suggests the Book of Bobalorian.
Well, you know, I just on that, you know, I feel like these 2 series were always going to be closely linked because, you know, we got this announcement that the Book of Boba Fett was coming right at the end of the Mandalorian season 2, and it felt a little bit jarring. Maybe we weren't expecting it. So it makes sense to me that they've become so enmeshed.
You know, Philly Jackson here says, yeah, these last 2 episodes are basically Mandalorian season 3. I will say last week's felt more to me like Mandalorian season 3. It was hyper focused on him as a character. What is his next steps? As much as I love that episode, there's a version of this show where I almost feel like they could have skipped that episode and it wouldn't feel like Mandalorian season 3. Where it's like, oh, we catch up with the Mandalorian here. He could already have this gift for Grogu, you know, we just, and a new ship. Because this episode was tying a lot of things together. And like we said, it's just Luke and Grogu for a while. So yeah, it's an interesting approach. I am curious how much going forward shows set in this era. How much will the Ahsoka show, which is sort of the next one set in this era, be overlapping in the same way, right? It's like, coexisting.
Well, I like it. I like them being tightly woven like this. I think it's really interesting. So more of that from me.
I mean, I think we just have to kind of understand it because I think, again, Book of Boba Fett was like, they were very secretive about the show and they didn't do any press going into it and stuff. And I think we were just a little like, what is this show? And then week to week, we had to kind of figure that out. And it's still a little weird, but Arthur Mingo asks, now that Luke Tech looks great, do we still want Sebastian Stan to take over?
Well, probably not. It would be weird now, wouldn't it, after we've seen this episode, to have Sebastian Stan step in?
Yeah, I think so too. Also, I think I get it, guys. Sebastian Stan is a good actor who looks like a young Mark Hamill, but it's like if they did recast Luke, it wouldn't have to be Sebastian Stan. I mean, there's other actors out there. I'm sure great unknown actors out there that could resemble Mark Hamill. But yeah, I think at this point, they've committed, right? Like to do this episode. And now I feel like it would almost be weird. I know that there'll always be some people that just don't like the digital de-aging, like, I don't know, on principle. But now that they're doing it, I think that's what they're doing.
I mean, it's amazing when you think about when you watched Star Wars as a kid and, you know, to think that one day we'd be at this point, it's just incredible. So I'm going to say I'm embracing it.
Yeah, right. Matthew McGuire says, do we think this will wrap up the season, I'm sure, for next week? Will this wrap up or leave us with a cliffhanger?
Oh, I feel like there will be questions unanswered coming out of the finale, but I think it'll wrap up Boba Fett's arc in this series.
That's what I think too. I think like they'll resolve the conflict with the Pike Syndicate, which again is not the thing we've been most excited about. That'll be resolved. But there'll be plenty, you know, and now that they established Kim last year that they can do a post-credit scene, that was the crazy thing about the Mandalorian season 2. I almost feel like there's got to be something with Ahsoka or something, right?
Another new show announced.
Yeah, who knows? AGB 95008 says Grogu is going to be a Gen Z Jedi and reject all traditions.
I think so. Is he going to be a grey Jedi? We're still waiting for the grey Jedi.
I feel like they're not going to do the grey Jedi, but I do think the Grogu, yeah, it's like he's going to rejoin Mando. He'll be like Ahsoka, I think, in some way, who officially left the Jedi Order, but obviously was a highly trained Jedi. Yeah. And yeah, you know, it'll also dovetail. I mean, again, unless he tragically dies, he's still alive in the time of Rey. And it's like, yeah, there'll be this idea that he is this powerful, whether they call him a Jedi or not, he has got the abilities and can come back into play.
A little bit how much Din's skills now that he with the Darksaber are going to play into his relationship with Grogu. Will Grogu get his hands on the Darksaber?
Ooh, yeah, right. He'll be the natural with it.
Yeah.
One more here from Matthew McGuire. How did they get Yoda's saber? I mean, it was lost on Coruscant how long ago at this point? Or will we ever get stories for it, Anakin saber? I will throw in here because I got one angry tweet about this. There was a comic that had a story where they destroyed Palpatine's guys rounded up lightsabers of the Jedi that they'd killed, and in Yoda's case, he fled and destroyed them all. So someone was very angry. Continuity. To which I'm like, you know, sometimes you do something because you're like, I want to do this is more interesting, and we'll figure it out later. I've already seen people say, well, maybe Yoda built another lightsaber on Dagobah and then decided not to use it. So I guess maybe they'll answer this question, Matthew McGuire, but I also don't think we need to worry too much about it. You know?
I mean, knowing Star Wars, they probably will answer it.
They probably will. Someone will answer it.
In 20 years.
I mean, I think we've talked about this, but it's like when the expanded universe was happening, which Lucas had never, you know, he had never really been involved in, and he certainly was like, they're doing their own thing. Whenever one of his stories would directly contradict something from those books and comics, they would then bend over backwards to put in a new explanation to how it all makes sense. So yeah, someone can fish that Lotus saber out before it's destroyed, or they'll say Yoda built another one. Yeah, but I think you're right, Kim. Eventually they will. Let's see. Langley M. Neely, you know, this is a topic that comes up a lot. I understand why. I am so sick of Tatooine. Sadly, we're going right back for Obi-Wan and maybe Andor. I don't think Andor will go to Tatooine. Obi-Wan's got to start and end on Tatooine, but not necessarily the whole thing. Are you sick of Tatooine, Kim?
I mean, I'm not sick of Tatooine, no, but you know, I do think that at the end of this, peace will be restored to Tatooine, and it will be, you know, less of a place of scum and villainy than it has been, and so we may not need to explore it much further. So I think you're right about Obi-Wan, start and end there, but but maybe the action will take place, the bulk of the action will take place elsewhere.
Yeah, I think I agree. It's like, it's easy to joke about, Tatooine and the fact that Luke Skywalker, the biggest undersell ever, saying that this is like, the furthest place from the brightest part of the, saying how nothing happens here when it seems like everything happened on Tatooine. I also think I saw, I forget who, someone on Twitter, a friend of mine, had a good point about why they keep going back to Tatooine just from a story standpoint, especially where casual fans are concerned, which is, it's one of the few Star Wars planets they've established already. That gives you like an easy way to have like cities and a bar and life. Because either you've got ones that are like all, forest or all, Ewok Village, you can't have people like hanging out in a bar in the same way. Or Coruscant you could go back to, but I think that's too much. It's almost like, if you want just like environments that are good for storytelling, Tatooine has been an easy one. I also think, they need to probably start telling more stories away from it.
I mean, we could go back to Canto Bight.
We could move back to Canto Bight.
I do think it's worth mentioning, just the wannabe producer in me, like, it does save money when the sets are built, like we can go film, it's kind of like Tyler Perry having like the White House replica in his studio. It's like, it's right here, you just put up the lights and let's shoot it. We already know. So like, if I'm going to build a really intricate Star Wars city like they have to now, let's get multiple seasons and stories out of it, because otherwise, just from a budget perspective, like, that's so much cost and labor, which may not be the answer, but to me, that's what I point to.
I think even with digital sets, like they have to create from scratch. But I
am Amy Sedaris' place, like her workshop is built, so you could just go to the workshop, whatever. Even though I know a lot of times they tear it down, and maybe I'm completely wrong, but like it just, that's my thought.
Yeah, I mean, a lot of that they're using that, the volume, their digital background, but even that stuff, it's like that's what they have plates for, that's what they built models for and already shot. So there is a lot of stuff done, but I will be surprised, and I think I'd be a little grumpy if Andor goes to Tatooine. It would be funny if he's like, the whole thing is on Tatooine.
They should do a Tatooine show, like just be like an improv. There's like a mammoth where it all takes place in one room, like they should do that, where it's just like 10 characters, Amy Sedaris' workshop. We filmed it for $1,000.
Maybe we could just follow Luke's childhood friends.
Right. Yes.
Oh
they show back up.
That's right. Fixer and Cammy. Get them in there. Let's see. Zeno Hour says it's clear the Book of Boba Fett is indeed more about setting up Mandalorian season 3 and Ahsoka rather than being a traditional spin-off. I think maybe it's kind of what you were saying, Kim. It's like, it's like it's not a spin-off as much as like an arm, right? Like it's all an ecosystem that they're looking at it as. And I can see the criticism of that being like, hey, I just wanted to watch a cool show about Boba Fett, but it doesn't seem like that's their approach. What do you think? Is this more setting up Mando and Ahsoka?
Yeah, no, I agree with what you said. It does feel like they're just, trying to establish this, this big kind of universe. I mean, it already exists, doesn't it, as a connected universe, but I really love what they're doing here. It does have flaws, the series, but I really love how, I'll say it again, closely woven it is with The Mandalorian, and that makes me excited for these series going forward. How closely linked they'll all be.
And I think what you're saying is valid too, about it is a universe within a universe, almost like we're now referring to like the James Gunn universe within the DCEU, right? So it's like, these Favreau and Filoni shows that are all set the same time frame, about 5 years after Jedi. I think, joking as we are, it's like, I think Andor will be its own thing, and I think Kenobi, even though it'll be on Tatooine, will be its own thing, and so will the Acolyte and a bunch of these shows. But I think these that they're doing, and Ahsoka, and if they ever make that Rangers of the New Republic show that Gina Carano got herself taken off of, these shows I think we should expect almost like the Arrowverse. It's like lots of cross population, and people popping up. But it is fun. I think maybe we have to just reset that as our expectations now that we've seen the Book of Boba Fett.
It's like the MCU, right? Like they trained us to kind of expect it, and so it's just like they're like, it almost feels like they're like retraining us as the audience a little bit to be like, just know it's never not all the stories, to a certain extent.
Right. AGB 95008 asks as well, will we ever see a fully grown Grogu? If so, how similar will he look to adult Yoda? What if he's like jacked? Like he's do you lift, bro, Grogu?
I expect we will at some point. I don't know how far in the future, but yeah, baby Groot grew up.
It is hard because we met him as a baby, and that's a big part of his appeal. They did that flashback. He was even smaller little baby decades before.
Yeah, but he can stay young for a long time because he ages slowly. So we can have lots more baby Yoda.
I think so too. But maybe some story will be told to him as adult. We should mention before we end, something I forgot to mention is when they do that flashback to the Jedi Temple on Coruscant and his perspective of Order 66. Very pointedly, it ends with the stormtroopers coming at him, or I guess these are still clone troopers at this point. And so we still don't know who saved him. So that is a story left to be told, is who got him off of, who rescued him in a dire time. Look at that. They're just gonna kill that beautiful little Grogu.
Look at the fear on his face. Left him. Oh no.
So who miraculously jumped in is a story left to be told.
My theory is that it's Yaddle.
Yaddle.
Yes.
We can only hope. I'm all for that. Let's do just quick. What do you want to see in the finale next week, Kim? What do you expect to see? What do you hope to see?
I expect it to be 2 hours long to tie all this stuff up. I want to see everyone come together. Like I said about the bombing in the sanctuary, I feel like that was done to mobilize the ordinary people. And, I hope the Trandoshans and the Aqualish and the Klatooinians have a rethink and join the fight. And there's a big showdown. But mainly I want to see Boba Fett riding his Rancor that he has given a name to.
Yes, that has to happen. Trejo needs to return. I think everything you said is probably going to happen. Cobb Vanth will mobilize Freetown now that he got injured, but he has he's not going to take the offer to sit this out. So he will join the fight. I think we'll get some Oliphant in there. It's funny again. Like last week, I really thought, when we wouldn't see Grogu and Luke. Now we have to, right? Like they could have gotten away with it this week. Again, Mando could have shown up on Tatooine and had his reunion off screen, and maybe we think we'll see it in Mando season 3. But now that they've given us these 2 episodes, now we have to see Grogu make his choice. So I don't know if Grogu enters the fight, but I mean that would be fun. That would be such a what is the term? I never pronounce it right. Deus Machina.
Deus Ex Machina.
Yeah. If Luke showed up again at the end of the finale, it just wipes out the Pikes.
Unless he's like, here's Yaddle, and then we also get Yaddle.
And he's got Yaddle
here too.
I don't think that's going to happen. But yeah, we have to resolve that as well. I'm going to make a bold prediction here. Boba Fett will speak in the finale of the book.
Oh.
Odds aren't looking good for you, Eric.
Don't put any money on that, Eric.
What if it's just like, yep, like at the very end? Like FedEx Shan's like, are you satisfied, Boba? Yep. So those are our bold predictions that who knows at this point, right, guys? Like, I mean, maybe Palpatine showing up next week. I don't know.
Also to introduce Yaddle. No matter what, as long as they're there to then shepherd in Yaddle, I'm good.
Yaddle. We're getting Snoke next week. We are getting the original Rancor Keeper from Return of the Jedi is going to show up. Every character from Star Wars Rebels. It's just going to be crazy.
Get your bingo cards ready.
Get your bingo cards ready. Get your action figures out and predict. And the Shore Trooper. He'll show up because he's my favorite trooper. All right, guys. Kim, thank you. Everyone, thank you. We will be back with more Boba Fett chat next week, but we'll have plenty more between then here. So keep it here at Fandom. Thanks.